I think would be super fun for us to share with our viewers today would be to give them a little peek into our pre-calls that we do before
Mm,
our actual Impact with Influence calls, because that's really where the magic starts.
this is so true. That's true. Pre-calls are so my jam. I love it because on the pre-call, we get to explore our clients submit questions ahead of time. We also deal with questions that come up on the call, but this is a way to kind of get in line and make sure that your question is answered. So clients will typically submit a question, and that allows us to, as a team, to kind of
Mhm.
look into the verbiage that they've used because there are so many interesting dells. And I think we approach client questions quite differently than a lot of other coaching companies do. At least has been my experience from people that I've worked with. Do you want to share sort of your take on how we do that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree because what I love about the process that we do is it's very purposeful and it kind of takes a couple of different like we have a couple of categories or filters that we put all questions through. And so we take it so most coaching programs they'll take it and put it through like a tactical filter and then answer questions that way, which makes a lot of sense and we totally do that. So we have like a tactical filter to give tactical answers to questions that require that, right? But then we
Yeah.
also put Go ahead.
Just to
Yeah.
clarify what that means. So like when we say tactical, that means somebody says, "Well, should I have this question on my discovery call application?" for example, right? So it's a very straight yes, like yes or no, or like, what should I do kind of question. And typically what I've experienced with other coaching programs is they will just give you an answer to whatever question you've asked. The problem that happens is oftentimes you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you can't see. You don't know what energy you may or may not be trapped in. And so, who is to say that that was, in fact, the question that's going to lead you to the answer and the release of your attention versus a question that's only going to lead to three other questions, which will then lead to three other questions each, and so on and so forth, which is what typically happens when it is not the right question. So, a huge part of what we do on the pre call is identifying the right question.
Exactly, exactly, and so that's why we also put every question through a mindset filter, and so it's not like, "Oh, we have all these steps and boxes that we check." It's not that
No,
way because it's also we also wanna make sure that we're very client-led when it's time to actually be on the call with the client. But we are looking at every question through the eyes of who is this client who's come to us? What is it that they deeply desire to achieve here? What are some of the areas that hold them back so that we can really see the question through those filters and then know to ask or see if there are some better questions that we can ask them first or to see if they can come up with a better question themselves.
exactly. Because you know how Tony Robbins says the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. So, one thing that
Mm.
we are obsessed with here at Impact with Influence is asking a better question, seeing if the question is only a lid for a deeper issue or a deeper conundrum or dilemma or roiling of energies that's going on. And so like you said, we're always looking at not just the words of the question or where the question seems to be leading, but where is it originating from? What
Mhm.
energy is this client bringing to the question? What energy does this client typically show up with? What's their wounded? And we typically know this because our clients work with our mindset team. So they're working with a hypnotherapist. They're going through, we have a whole process in Impact with Clarity, which we could talk about in a second, where, you as a viewer, if you're not ready to work with us with Impact with Influence yet, you as a viewer can experience some of these tools up front so that you can see how freaking effective they are. Because the fact of
Mhm.
the matter is, if you're a coach and you are simply answering whatever your client is asking you, what you will notice, pay attention, because what you will notice is that you're going to start going around in circles. They will seem to ask you the same question over and over. And we see this with our clients sometimes, is they will ask the same question week after week after week. And we're like, that's interesting. Our answers are not landing. There's something blocking
Mhm.
them from seeing. So let's start digging. What's a better question? What's a deeper
Yeah.
layer here that we can explore?
Yeah, and to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. When clients come and ask the same question or like a flavor of the same question over and over again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This little guy does not want to stay in my ear. get that to sting. All right. As I was saying, so there is really nothing wrong with it. It's part of our job as the coaches to
Yeah.
see, oh, okay, what we're saying is not landing. We want to shift the perspective with which we're looking at the question and answering so we can deeply serve our clients. So Gita, let's give an example, like one
I
of
love
the
it.
pre-call questions that we did recently.
So I was thinking of, yeah, so somebody asked a question that said, hey, I would love to be able to, I want to hire, I want to have a team like you guys have. And I would love to be, there are all these different coaches, 3 or 4 different coaches that I'm looking at working with, collaborating with, and having them help me deliver my program. Who should I hire? How should I pay them? What's the deal? So that was the
Mhm.
question. So on the surface of it, super tactical. Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense, right? And we even encourage our clients to think about, are there collaborations that will make their offering so completely different from what's on the market that, it's really exciting. That said, in this particular case, we were like, we noticed something about the way that this particular client shows up. And we wanted to be mindful of it. And again,
Mhm.
this is not about catching anybody out. So this is very, very important. We often know where to look with these mindset bugaboos because we have fallen into them many times,
Yes.
continue to fall into them. Like, you know, and that's why we know to go there with compassion. We know, like, when you go to hide behind a bush, we're already behind that bush waiting for you. Be like, oh, hey, this is not the path. Let's go back to the track and let's keep running, right? So in this particular case, we noticed that this client has this habit of skipping ahead. And I'm a 9 quick start. If you're familiar with the Colby A index, it's a work style test that helps you see what you have the most energy for. So I'm a quick start, which means I have a lot of energy for starting things. If you're a hair on fire visionary type person, you're probably like me, right? So massive galloping squirrel syndrome. Your ideas have ideas. It's really hard for you to stay on track. And so one of the compensating mechanisms for this way of being is you tend to try and you're very future oriented. You're always kind of skipping steps and trying to look ahead because you're like, I don't know when I'm going to run out of energy for this particular idea or project. So I better
Mhm.
get as much done as possible while I still have the energy for it. So we were noticing a little bit of that energy in this particular case. So what did we ask her, Maria?
Well, so the most crucial question we asked her was, why are you asking this question? Because we really wanted to peel the layers. We already had a tactical answer to this particular question because we have that, right? But because we sensed that this was coming from a different place and we really wanted to pinpoint the deeper question that she really wanted answered, that is what we started with.
Exactly. And we realized that there were all these like really great nice to haves. She really craved a little bit of that team feeling of like being
Mhm.
supported. Support was a big deal. She was like, I've never let myself have that before. And this feels like an expansion. So that's exciting. So now we want to be very careful to not squash that because that's
Mhm.
really, really important. But then there was that magic word, and we're very, this is what we listen for, and we have our intuition turned on 100 to make sure that we're catching those nuances. She said the word support, and I thought, interesting. If you have 3 or 4 other coaches that are all doing these they're great ideas, but they're very much nice to have given the topic that you help people with, you have more than enough to deliver this program and make it absolutely killer. What is the real support that's going to change your game? So that was the question. So we sort of lobbed back at her. And then she was like, wait, what do you mean? And I was like, well, let me tell you a story. When I first started, the first person I hired in my coaching company, and this was week 1, was I hired somebody with what I call structure brain. So somebody who's very task oriented, list oriented. These days, Gino Wickman would call that person an integrator, somebody who thinks in systems. I'm creative chaos brain. I'm brilliant. I can come up with content. I can come up with concepts. I can connect ideas like nobody's business. But God help me when it comes to a system, right? It's just like, oh God. So turning all of those ideas into a coherent plan or task list, that's my challenge.
Mm.
So the very first hire I made was actually someone we used to joke that she was the boss of me. I hired her to be the boss of me. She would interview me, kind of take all my mad ideas and like, kind of what's the plan. We would create a priority list based on our resources and time and whatnot. And then she would turn those into tasks. And then I would have a big task per day. I might have some smaller tasks like emails and whatnot, but I would generally have a big task per day. And I was
Mhm.
not allowed to do all my other stuff until I finished that freaking task. And oh my God, what a relief, because it kept me on track. It allowed me to give her a 400% raise by the end of the first month. I was broke. I had $300 in my bank account, and I would have owed her, just without the raise, I would have owed her 500 at the end of the month. So let me tell you, I was a little bit on the desperate side there. But I was like, you know what? We're going to make this work because I know that I have what it takes. I just need support. I need structure. So honestly, if you're listening and you're a coach and you do identify as a hair on fire visionary, the best support that you should be investing in, other than the coaching where you know what the where you're going, like if you have a sense of where you're going and all of the details of what you want to build and stuff, then the next hire after that really should be somebody who's going to be the boss of you and keep you accountable. Like that is the most effective. You need somebody to help you with the business. You don't need somebody to help you with the coaching, because the coaching is your zone of genius. You
Yeah.
need to be hiring for what you suck at. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense, and it's so true, and it's not necessarily the first place that we will go in our minds when we think about hiring,
Exactly.
right?
It's not a
Because
shiny object.
right, it's not shiny and it doesn't necessarily feed into all the pieces of what excites us, but it's the support that we need, the underpinning of what we often need to be able to then get our programs out there so that we're able to actually do the coaching that we really truly want to do. And what's really cool about, I'm so glad we were able to really talk about this in our pre-call through the filters that we do, because we were able to brainstorm given what we know about this client and then go to the client and then let her lead the conversation. And we actually ended up exactly in this place. She led us there, that this was really what it was that she needed.
Exactly. So then it just allows for such a, because and it we don't claim to have all the answers. We really don't.
Right.
But if you ask a better question, the
Yeah.
client, this is what I love so much about this process, is the client themselves is resourced to come up
Mhm.
with a better answer or to guide the conversation in such a way that we can then be the support that she needs and give her the answer that she's looking for, even though it was a completely different answer from the question that she asked. Imagine if
Yeah.
we had just straight up answered and be like, oh, you pay them hourly, or you do this or you do that, and here's how you do it. Like, here's how you structure the agreement. That would not have solved her problem. It would have
Yes.
amplified her problem, because now she would have had overhead without any underlying structure to support her. And that would have
Yes.
actually created more stress long term.
Yes, now somebody else in a whole different situation, that might have been the answer for them, but in
Correct.
this client, in this particular situation, it wasn't, and so we were able to figure that out, deduce it so that we could deeply serve her in the way that she needed to be served at this point on her journey.
Exactly. And if you're listening and you're like, man, I wish I knew how to ask those kinds of questions or listen in that intuitive way. Well,
Mhm.
we have a training that is so affordable at the moment. I don't know how long it's going to stay affordable, but it's very affordable at the moment. We're currently offering it for 70% off. It's called Impact with Clarity, and it has these tools that will help you really hone and develop your intuition. And you're going to use yourself as a blueprint. So I always believe that you can't coach other people if you don't know how to first coach yourself, at least a little
Mhm.
bit, and use the tools on yourself to see where they land and where it takes you. Like I said, you want to be the kind of coach that knows all the best hiding places so that when your clients go hide, you're already waiting for them there, right? How would you know
Exactly.
those hiding places? Because you've hidden there and you've
Yeah.
gently but firmly called yourself out. You've gently but firmly sort of pulled yourself out of whatever wounded pattern you're in. And so that we want that for everybody. We've made this program affordable and accessible to all, because we don't actually want to work with people that don't have a basic understanding of these concepts. So we're
Mhm.
kind of like, here, let's help you get pre-educated so that you can then come in and hit the ground running, and then we can help you make so much progress in a really limited time. So if you're looking for that link, it's around this video somewhere. It's impactwithinfluence.com/clarity. And the program itself is called Impact with Clarity.
Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me today, Geeta. I always love our time together when we get to
I
geek out
know.
on all the ins and outs of what happens on our calls, and it was really cool for us to dive into the pre-call process because we don't actually talk about that much. So I'm so glad we were able to give a little peek into what happens before the calls so our clients and really our viewers know exactly what goes into everything that we do on the calls. So
Love
thank
it.
you.
I don't think our clients knew all this stuff either.
That's true.
So if you're a
You're right.
client and you're watching, give us a shout out and tell us what you think.